YouTubers, this is another video from your friendly neighborhood reviewer, Evelyn. So I recently just saw Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse of Madness, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, also with the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff, played by Elizabeth Olsen. So I didn't know what I would come into my expectations of watching Doctor Strange 2, because Spider-Man No Way Home was a great success with bringing in the multiverse into question. I still stand by what I initially said about Spider-Man No Way From Home. It was Doctor Strange's fault that this whole cataclysmic event happened. Because I said if Doctor Strange, was a real he was a doctor before becoming the Sorcerer Supreme, he should have told Peter Parker the side effects of using this spell and what were the conditions, obviously. So back to the movie. Doctor Strange 2 opens up with a chase scene with America Chavez, with one version of Doctor Strange that had a long ponytail and it was like they were running from a creature. However, the creature gets up to them, and that Doctor Strange sees the only way to save, the world or whatever is to take over America Chavez's powers. America Chavez is a superhero. I don't know much about her. From what I can tell, the first incarnation of a superhero quite unknown as her, as well Latin looking. So from what we can gather her powers, is she can travel from different dimensions, but she has no control over these powers. And we find that Doctor Strange here is very prominent because the overall message of the movie is about Stephen's ego. That one thing from Doctor Strange 1 we can clearly see, and that him becoming sorceress hasn't really helped. More like at times giving him more that god complex if he can control all of magic. The initial dream sequence finishes. The Doctor Strange that we know wakes up from a nightmare and he chalks it up to a nightmare. As the movie progresses, he's been invited to his ex-girlfriend's wedding, which I find extremely awkward. Christine, if you may remember her from the first movie, he's invited there to go to the wedding and see, the love of his life apparently get married to somebody else, and that whole wedding scene was excruciatingly uncomfortable. Stephen clearly is not comfortable being there. And the other thing I found a bit weird was the wig piece or the hair piece that the Benedict was wearing in the movie. At times it looked super unnatural, and other times it looked more natural, fitting to his face and his head. Because the first thing within the wedding, the hairline is extremely weird. You don't even believe it's his hair for real. But the wedding is cut short when Stephen's in the balcony. He clearly hears there's a big commotion going on in the central town, from New York. So we see him jump quickly into action by whipping out his magic cape and then seeing what's going on. The only thing he sees is that a load of cars have been smushed in by an invisible force and a young girl, aka America, running from this force. So when Stephen goes and reveals the monster, it turns out it looks like a big creature with one eye, looks like an octopus type of thing. So he manages to save the young girl. But after that, when they hear the young girl's story, him and Wong, also Wong's in the movie, following on from Spider-Man No Way From Home, Wong is the new Sorcerer Supreme, since Stephen and the rest of the people all went missing in the blip, as they say, for 5 years. So when Stephen came back, he was no longer the Sorcerer Supreme, but he still lives in that place that they have. Well, anyway, the place that they have, so they all live there. So as Wong and Stephen are hearing America Chavez's story, they have a hard time believing her that she can cross through different dimensions. So the movie essentially is about a string of coincidences. But then again, from what I hear in the news, Kevin Feige said that in the events of the Loki series, they are the real reason that the multiverse has been fracturing and having these incursions. But as Stephen takes America Chavez under his wing to protect her at all costs, he starts trying to get help. He realized on that big one-eyed creature that there were some type of runes, hex runes. So he goes to Wanda for help. We find that Wanda's what's happened to Wanda after the events of WandaVision. We find her apparently living in a remote place, having a huge field of forest, growing apples apparently. But then again, she dreams of her children, the children that she artificially made of her imagination, apparently in different realities, different multiverses. So when as Steven crops up, he finds Wanda by the trees, gathering plants. And that bit I knew was an illusion of all the trees and stuff, because Steven picks up one of the branches and he's got, it's almost felt like it's real. And in the midst of the conversation between both of them, I don't know whether Steven knew or not knew, but he asked Wanda for help in protecting America, but he never referred to her by the name. But Wanda gives it away, referring to the girl's name when Steven clearly didn't, and then we get the illusion broken, basically that Wanda's living in some sort of type of, I wouldn't say hell, everything just decrepit. And we realize that the big bad within the film is Wanda Maximoff and her grief. That apparently at the end of WandaVision, she got the dark hold, like you can say an evil version of the witch, the Wiccan, the Grimoire, and that dark hold is corrupting Wanda essentially, that her grief, her regrets, just making her obsessed on finding her children in a different reality. And Steven realizes that the big enemy here is Wanda, and how much he tried to convince her that the children are okay in a different reality, and that even if you do go in a different multiverse, you'll be killing their version's mother, which is obviously her version, that version's of Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch. But Wanda doesn't want to reason with anything, no matter how much they try to tell her. She's like, no, that's the reason that she's getting America Chavez for draining her powers to go to a different reality, and also giving her boys the powers. So in the midst of all of this, America's at Cumberbatch, the place where all the sorcerers are and stuff being held. There's a big fight scene between all the sorcerers against Wanda, and inadvertently America ends up sending her and Steven into different dimensions, because we find out that America Chavez can't control her powers. Only when she feels afraid that she's able to open up a portal. So we have a cool sequence of going through different dimensions, going from one dimension to another one. There's a paint kind of like multiverse type of thing. So it's very similar to Doctor Strange 1, where the initial Sorcerer Supreme went and took Steven's soul out from his body. So we have a similar sequence to that, harkening back to that. And once both America and Steven arrived to the initial verse, like which verse did they go off to? I think Earth 838. Then we start seeing the other versions of within Steven's life. We see Mordo there. Apparently he's good with long dreadlocks. And as Steven and America start talking about having to get back, they say they should talk to their versions of 838 Steven Strange. So as they go to the location where usually the Sorcerer Supreme resides, we find Mordo, and then we find a great big giant statue, a homage to their Doctor Strange's universe. And then we get introduced to the Illuminati. There was a lot of leaks. I bet everybody's seen this leak, so it's not going to be anything new. We end up finding out that a part of the Illuminati, we have Professor Xavier, who comes in his iconic yellow chair from the animated series. And then we see also Peggy Carter as was it Captain Carter? I can't remember her name. She's also part of it. And then we also got Monica Rambeau, their versions of Captain Marvel. And then we get introduced to the initial concept of Dr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. He's also part of it. My feeling, they've introduced finally that everybody, the fans went and fan casted John, whatever his name is, John Kuskitsi, whatever the guy's surname is, part of that duo that he went and directed The Quiet Place and had his wife starring in the film. They went and fan casted this guy to be Dr. Fantastic. Yeah, perfect fan cast. The feeling I get, since he had a premature death when Wanda ran and found the group where Steven and America Chavez is, that when they get back to the initial Earth that we all know, how the initial series of the Avengers went off, I think they'll reintroduce Mr. Fantastic and the Fantastic Four, their origin stories there. So we saw one version of Mr. Fantastic that died prematurely, got Cisco barbed like marshmallows. So we'll get to probably see that. But it's a shame that they ended up dying early. And who else was there? Also, of course, Mordor, Professor Xavier, and then we get an initial thing that Professor X goes and scans Stephen's, head, because they went and arrested Stephen in America for violations of like going through different multiverses, and also Doctor Strange ends up finding out that their versions of Doctor Strange went and got corrupted by the Darkhold. And that's the reason they said initially that Stephen went and formed the Illuminati. But Wanda goes and ends up finding them by she sleepwalks into her own body, like kind of like a meditation mind link thing. And we can see the character of Wanda almost become so monstrous, like a horror movie, that they try to make it. And also there's another part where Stephen has to, in the movie also deals with Stephen's not unrequited love, but his love for Christine Palmer and all the regrets that Stephen has about the way he treated her. And Stephen ends up finding a different Christine Palmer in Earth 838 with the same problems that he had with his Christine. So it gets a little confusing, a little meta here. And we kind of feel like Stephen gets some sort of resolution with Christine, because with the fight against Wanda, America goes and opens up a portal, and Christine and Stephen end up falling into a different reality that had an incursion where both realities, Earths collapse together, and he ends up finding the evil Doctor Strange from what we refer to What If. I haven't seen the series of What If, so there's a big fight scene, and by the end of it, our Stephen, the one that we know, ends up winning and ends up using the Darkhold to go and save America against Wanda, because Wanda's there in some big huge cliff thing where apparently that's the sources of the prophecy for the Scarlet Witch. And Wanda's like doing a big kind of ritual thing of trying to drain the powers, but Stephen sleepwalks into the corpse of himself, because in the beginning of the film, Doctor Strange with the ponytail ends up falling into Stephen's universe and essentially dead. So then we get the zombie Doctor Strange being inhabited by the one that we know. Gets a little confusing trying to explain each little bit, but the point being, Stephen uses the Darkhold and essentially helps America to use her powers to control it, and she ends up helping in defeating Wanda by showing Wanda what she's become. She sends her back to Earth 838, and she sees the boys there and the other one they're trying to defend the sons. And when she tries to engage with the sons that she initially created, has in her mind, they see as a monster. And that bit, Wanda Maximoff finally realizes that she's gone too far, that what she wants is not going to bring her any happiness. And she realizes that in all the other universes, her children are safe, and she has to live with that fact, unfortunately. And she ends up collapsing that big kind of temple thing that had the Darkhold spells that was initially carved into the walls for it to disappear along with her. We don't know whether she's dead or anything, but if there's no body, there's no death. That's how it goes, usually in these things. By the end of the movie, it's kind of like a big kumbaya scene that America knows somewhat how to now control her powers. She's been kept safe in Cumberbatch, where all the other Doctor Strange, sorcerers are there. She's there. They're rebuilding the temple. We can kind of see Stephen Strange having closure with his life with Christine and the regrets. He even changes the cracked glass on his watch. By the end of the film, and of course that Stephen and America both have a strong kind of tie. It's kind of like a Batman-Robin situation, where he feels an appreciation for the younger person and what she has to deal with. But at the end, when Stephen's there, like in normal clothes, even Stephen Strange in normal clothes doesn't look natural. He ends up screaming in pain, and the third eye that the evil Doctor Strange has appears. I don't think it's such a bad thing for him to have the third eye, but apparently it's showing that he's getting corrupt. And then we get a cutscene. At the cutscene, I had no idea, but like some unknown person, apparently Charlize Theron, I have a feeling, playing the character of Doctor Strange's comic book wife, saying that an incursion has happened and it's his fault that to go and help, and Steven obliges and says yeah. Okay, so that's the premise of the movie. Like, what did I think about the movie? It was great, but I just felt like it was a slightly let down plot-wise, like the plot. Because there was many moving parts within the series and so many, cameos that we never fully got to appreciate, and they all got obliterated. And I can understand the kind of scare factor, but it wasn't really that scary, to be honest. But what do I have hopes for the Doctor Strange 3, I hope they can go back to less taking so much of these other characters, because how can you appreciate these cameos when it's like, it's just so fleeting? And when you want to concentrate on the main character, Dr. Stephen Strange, it becomes incoincidental that all these other side characters. What Marvel loves to do is to bring in these side characters to strengthen, you know, the main actor, but a lot of times the main actor's story gets lost on this. And it was all a bit demoralizing that Stephen Strange, for him to find another universe, everybody essentially doesn't like him. That his ego. But anyway, this is the end of the movie. This is an informal sit-down video because with such a new movie like this, if I try to put little clips, I have a feeling that I might get copyrighted. But as I say again, thank you to all those who subscribed. Any new viewers, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. It will help the channel grow. Leave any recommendations or what else you would like me to review. And as I leave you always,